Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another weekday edition of EnCryptid Connections. I am your host, Kyle, and I am extremely excited and grateful for tonight's guest. This is like bucket list stuff for me. As a fan of the subject, I've watched just about every documentary, every show, read every article, book, whatever I could. That was related to Bigfoot and Sasquatch. And so, if you know the subject, you know this man, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ron Moorhead. How are you tonight, Ron?
I'm fine. Good to be with you, Kyle. Thanks for the introduction.
Thank you very much for being here. So, I'm going to start probably where everybody else starts, with the Sierra Sounds, because it's probably what you're most known for. I would say. Do you get sick of talking about it?
No, I love it. That's what I do.
It's amazing. I mean, it's incredible. I even played this for my mother, who, because she wanted to know what was going on with the show and who was coming on tonight. And I said, Mom, I don't even want to talk about it. I'm so excited. Like, I can't talk about it. I'll send you something and you can listen to it. And so I sent it to her, and we're making her a believer. We're making her a believer slowly.
Well,
But yeah. So this is it's the most amazing audio clip that there's ever been of these, supposed bipedal hominid type creatures. It's been put through the ringer again and again, and every time it's substantiated. This is real. This is not some a known animal. This is not somebody out there trying to make this noise with their voice. I want to know, when you initially heard this, what were you thinking? Were you terrified? I mean, I would have been scared.
Well, strangely enough, I wasn't all that scared. The other guys had come back and they hadn't been eaten or anything, so I figured these things, could be okay. However, I went back with a guy who didn't want to go back up by himself. It just frightened him because it is kind of concerning when you first hear them. But I was 29 then, and I wasn't afraid of anything, so I just got right on one of them shoulders, I guess. I don't know, but it was exciting, to be honest with you. And we look forward to going up there to see if they would come around and see if we could interact with them or what we could have something go on, And didn't happen every time, but it did happen quite a bit in 71, 72, all the way into 76, actually.
Amazing.
And we started recording, and had the recordings analyzed. I think that's what makes my story credible, is the science that we've got behind the sounds. And we didn't just say we backed up with a truck and opened a six-pack and started hunting. Started recording these things. It's 8 miles in the wilderness from the closest place you can drive to, and it's 8,400 feet in elevation, the camp is, and it's really imposing to get there. And no one's around. We knew they were something unique, but we just thought they were just an ape in the woods like most researchers think now. But I've been studying this thing now and interacting with them, and I think they're a whole lot more than just an ape in the woods. At least what we were dealing with was. And we shown from the studies that they were not fake. The recordings are real. They were not speeded up. They were not slowed down. They were not manipulated in any way. And that was by a professor at the University of Wyoming who did a year-long study on them just to see the credibility of them. And Al Berry's responsible for that. He had to know, because he was there. He was sent there really to try to uncover a hoax. He thought it was probably a hoax. So did Ivan Sanderson. So did Peter Byrne. I read the correspondence years later that those guys had, and everybody thought it was probably somebody pulling somebody's leg, but we invited Al in there, and he was trying to, he'd go through our packs. He told me this later on, go through our packs when we were out walking around, stuff like that. Trying to find somebody that could be doing this so far back in there, not leaving any signs, other than their big footprints. So anyway, that kind of got the thing going when Dr. Curlin got a hold of them in the University of Wyoming. But that wasn't enough. Academia, even though he showed they were outside the human range, representing an animal over 8 foot tall, and he's a professor. I mean, written a lot of papers. He's a credible person. You can't just write him off, But
right.
A lot of academia just say, "Oh, primate, we're the only ones supposed to be able to talk." Well, according to Dr. Lieberman at Brown University, that's true. Only humans have the vocal mechanism for language. For what this represents was a language, and we established that by a cryptolinguist from the Navy, Scott Nelson. And he heard him by accident and came out and interviewed us in 2008 and asked if he could go study him. So he went out and went back and came back and said they have a language by the human definition of language, and that's pretty unique because only humans have what it takes for language.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, because Al Berry, he went to Dr. Lieberman first, and Dr. Lieberman thought he was some student trying to hoax him or something, so he wouldn't even pay attention to it. He just passed away this last July, by the Dr. Lieberman. He was a cognitive scientist for primates, and very credible. So when you put all three of those dots together, you got a cryptolinguist who was trained by the Navy as a cryptolinguist to not decipher, but see if it's a code or if it's a language. If it is a language, what it could mean. He did this for his career in the Navy, and he can't be denied. A regular linguist can't do what he did. He's very up there with what they call perfect hearing, and he lived with the cans on. They call them cans on his ears, to listen to codes and see if it's a language or not. And he says it's a language, and he wrote a transcription code for it. That's on my website. And anyway, you put those three things together. Curlin's saying it represents, and it wasn't manipulated. The tapes weren't. They were all right. And actually, he took it to the people that did the Nixon tapes. The Watergate scandal.
Yeah.
Might still remember that.
Sure.
And they said they didn't just write it off. They said, well, it sounds like something that's not human made. And they just listened to it, but they wouldn't do a study on it because they're not free. These guys cost money.
Of course not.
So they recommended he find a professor someplace. So he went around looking for some academia that would study these things and take them seriously. And he like I say, went to Lieberman first, and he went to another professor out at Washington State, and he laughed him off too. So in fact, he used a sample, the sample of the sounds to his class, showing this is how people hoax you. That's as far as he would go with it. These guys, they did themselves a disservice by all this, because when you get to the facts of it and really do a study on it, you find out what these other guys who took it seriously and want to find out if it was good or bad, and it's good, and it can't be debunked. And you get somebody like, I forgot who he is, talk show host. He's very, very popular. He says he can mimic them. He can make the sounds. Well, I've challenged him over and over. He can't do it. Nobody can make these sounds according to the studies we've had done. Like these things, they go way up above anything we can do. They go inside our average human range, according to the graph Dr. Curran wrote, and then go below it. So I think they can go in infrasound, ultrasound, and anything in between.
Absolutely.
That's what I think.
Yeah,
and that's what the studies show, is that they can do that.
Yeah, it's amazing. When listening to it, over and over and seeing different people break it down, when you really stop and you listen, and if it's broken down into parts, you can hear clear syllables. Like they are trying to make some sort of words when they're communicating. Obviously, there's those certain parts where they're screaming and they sound, like some primal beast, but there's other parts where you can tell that it almost sounds like there's an inflection in their voice, like they're asking questions at times.
Well, when I interacted with him that night in '74, which is on my second CD, and it's also in my book, Voices in the Wilderness, he was asking me, I think it was a female, was asking me something. I was trying to mimic them back because I had no idea what they were trying to say. According to cryptolinguists, he says they were slowing their vocalizations down to hopefully you could understand what they were trying to say, but I
froze.
I've had too many people tell me I know what they're saying, but they'll tell me something different, so I don't know who to believe.
Oh, hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You froze on me for a minute there.
Oh no.
You did. right at the part where you started saying that they slowed their vocal
vocal speed down because they're very fast chatters, and he thinks they slowed their vocal rapid chatter down to something that maybe I could understand, because it was definitely a question. You could hear it went several times that night, yelling out at something. I was having fun with them. The first time they ever interacted with us while we was outside the shelter. Normally they wouldn't do anything till we're inside the shelter, and that was pretty unique. And that's the night I got to see one too, by the way. And when this big samurai cry came out behind me and shot down through the trees right there, that's the only glimpse I've ever had of one. And he was going down to the other two. We think there were two down there, an adolescent and a female. And they were the ones that I was really communicating with. The big male, I think, was up behind us.
So what did he look like?
Well, too fast, too dark.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't. It was just moonlight, so you just see him streaking through the trees. I couldn't give you any. It's big, and the thing is going so fast, and I don't know of any human that could go that fast through the forest like that with all the limbs and trees that have fell and all that, because it was just shooting right down to the creek where those others were, and it was almost like it was just floating. But I think they could
Yeah.
just run so smooth. But the speed of it was incredible.
You hear this
Yeah.
a lot when people talk about seeing them in motion, that they look like they're either floating or like as if they're almost on a conveyor belt. There's none of that bobbing up and down.
Right. Yeah.
It's just so fluid and smooth, and you would think that this big giant creature would be this lumbering goof, but
You'd think so. Yeah.
total opposite.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
It looked like it was floating down through there, so smooth. But I can't say it was floating because maybe just running smoothly. I don't know.
yeah, no, it's amazing though.
But it was
That
big. Yeah.
Yeah. That part that you're talking about in that tape where it's asking you a question, it sounds like it's asking you a question, is I think it's a part I'm thinking of. It almost is like ooh-ah-hoo, ooh-ah-hoo. Like, is that the part you're talking about? I'm not doing it any justice, but there's inflection in the
Oh,
tone.
absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure it was a question of some type.
Yeah. That's
And actually,
incredible
when
to
I
me.
responded, it actually acted like it was laughing at me or something, like it was
Yeah. Yeah.
making
Yeah.
fun of me.
Yes,
Well, they
exactly.
think that we think we're smart. When we was there, we was just thinking of an ape in the woods, like some unidentified animal, not realizing the significance of the language they had, anything like
Mhm.
that. Just underestimated what we're dealing with all this time. And they were playing with us, I think, a lot, curious about us. We thought
Sure.
we're curious about them. That's why we was up there too. But it's a hunting camp, so none of us were really looking for Bigfoot. I was, but I mean the other guys were there to hunt, and this happened. It would happen. If it didn't, it didn't. And it was happening.
So
So
you had an interest prior to this in the subject?
no, I didn't.
No.
I was raised religiously, and
Mhm.
I kind of remember the story about the Nephilim and the giants of old, and I had to go find out where giants came from. How can they still be here? They're not supposed to be here now. That's what scared one of the guys off. He wouldn't go back, and that's how I got involved. Actually, the guys were late coming out, and the women still didn't know what we're dealing with. If they was going to be eaten or carried away in a sleeping bag or just what. So he needed someone to go back with him, or he wasn't going to go. So I volunteered because I was friends with them all, and I knew them, but I hadn't been a hunter at that time, and there was a hunting camp. So it was five of them: the Johnsons and Bill McDowell and then this guy that wouldn't go back anymore. He doesn't go up there and spend the night anymore. In fact, hardly anybody does anymore.
I don't blame them.
No, it wasn't because of Bigfoot. I think it's just uh, we had to tear the shelter down in 2015.
Mm,
BLM or Forestry Service, someone found out about it. Well, they were
mm,
exposing a lot of them in those days. And but you can still go there. And I went there with David Paulides and his filmer, and that was in 2018. And we stayed up there for a week and packed in with mules, and it was a nice trip, really
yeah.
a good time. And he got put in that missing 411, the hunted, and I'm in about 15 minutes in that part. And right after that, there's a lady in there who's a tree hunter, and she told of a anomaly she saw when she's tree hunting of a pixelization form going from one tree to the other.
I remember
I
that.
thought that was pretty interesting because I heard that report from quite a few people over the years. At the same time, though, however, there was a UFO being seen down in the playground at the school about a mile away.
Really?
So I think there's a UFO component. In fact, about 20% of Bigfoot sightings have a UFO sighting with it, UFO
Hmm.
put on. And that's according to, see, the first one I think was in Eureka Times. I think it was Eureka Times in 1888 when they had a group of Indians, Native Americans, excuse me, and a rancher who said they seen a small moon come down, and three crazy bears jump out of it. So that's our first report of a UFO. That was in Huffington Post in 2012 is when I got a hold of it, and they found it from a paper of 1888. So there's a UFO, probably a UFO. I mean, moons don't come out and shoot out crazy bears.
Yeah, right. So now that we're talking about UFOs, your book, Quantum Bigfoot, discusses the quantum science that is, I don't want to say is because people get upset, but could potentially be attached to these things. There's so many reports of weird things happening, people seeing them cloaking, or a set of tracks that disappear. I mean, in the middle of a field, and then there's nothing around. There's no tree for them to jump into. There's no, they just stop, and orbs and all kinds of other stuff. So what's your thoughts? Tell me what you think.
Fred Beck, he claimed he shot one in 1924, I think it was, mine's Mount St. Helen, Ape Canyon, they call it. And he said at one time in his book, actually, or something I read that he is writing, that he followed some tracks and through this area, and it would have had to, the track just stopped. He said would have had to jump 160 feet to have not left another track.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people over the years say, well, the trackway just disappeared. Well, I get into how that could happen because too many people report it. You got to research, see, well, could that really happen, or you just want to blow them off like a researcher will. Some people say, well, a helicopter must have picked them up, right?
Yeah,
right.
They called the
no. Yeah, right. But anyway, I had it happen to me. My daughter had a sighting. We found the trackway, and it just stopped. And I looked everywhere trying to see where it could have went, and couldn't see any sign of it anywhere. But my quantum theory is, and it's really I got to say something here. Quantum physics works from the atom all the way through the stars. It's what we live with every day, like it or not. That's the way the universe works. We live in a world of Newtonian physics, which just works with our three-dimensional environment. But when you get out of that, and according to the quantum theory, quantum science, there's 11 dimensions, 10, one more counting time. So if you get into what's really going on from the most minute level, like Tesla said, everything's energy, frequency, and vibration. Well, if you get into the level of energy and frequency, then you get into what happens with energy and matter. Can they change their matter into energy? Well, according to Dr. Paul Dirac of Florida, he won the Nobel Prize in 1933 for stating that for antimatter, actually, but it states where matter can turn into energy. And that was established by CERN in 2012 when a particle changed into energy. So matter and energy, and according to Einstein, this is true too, are interchangeable. That should throw a loop into somebody's head because they say they can't disappear. Well, yes, things can disappear if they get the right frequency. And if these things can rate the frequency or somehow have the ability to change their matter into energy, their trackway would stop and they would cloak out. You wouldn't see them. You only see within certain parameters of light. And that's the 430 terahertz to 770 terahertz. That's our light frequency. All these other frequencies are out there.
Yeah.
And we are a frequency. Human beings are a frequency. And anyway, it's really exciting to get into what's really could be happening. And Al Berry had a master's degree. He's the one we took up there in 72, who fostered the studies, actually. And he said that whatever you do, stay with science. Don't talk about the crazy stuff that goes on up here, or you'll be invited to talk anywhere. Well, I started talking about it a few years back just because it's happened, and there has to be a science behind it. So that's what got me into quantum physics. What could cause something like these things that were happening to us up there and so many other people reporting? Is there a science behind it? There has to be a science behind it. Something has to be the foundation for these things that work like that. And there's a lot more going on than what we see with our three-dimensional eyes.
Absolutely.
A lot more. And people have to just understand that we just don't see everything. We don't hear everything. We can't hear ultrasound or infrasound. We don't hear that, but we feel infrasound. We don't have an olfactory sense or smell. It does not work like a bear's does. It's 2,100 times better than ours. And yet I think we know everything. Well, we don't know everything. We're just limited as human beings, and that's how we were made. So I get off on this thing. So just interrupt me and ask me.
No, go ahead. No, I'm enthralled.
I get excited about it. I do.
Me too.
I think I'm onto something here because if you go through West Texas A&M, where Dr. Christopher Baer, he said everything from the atom through the stars works according to quantum physics. Well, you got to believe that. I mean, when you get a professor saying it, right?
Sure, yeah.
And you got other professors saying it too. So it's not denied. It's just that some people can't get their head around it. I don't think they can. If they look into it like I have, I'm not a genius, but I start studying and do my homework. And when you start doing that stuff, you realize, yeah, there's things going on. And there's a lot of very, very professional people behind that sort of stuff. But then you get academia, normal academia, and the classical science just won't jump off their parameters they've been taught in. They've been taught in Newtonian physics, and that's just a box that they put themselves in, and they won't reach out of that box. And I've asked a couple of them, what do you think about quantum physics being involved in this? They don't even talk to me about quantum physics because that's not what they're trained in. They don't, they have to see the evidence. When something disappears, it has to be a phony. Well, no, there's a way that could happen. And anyway, I don't know what to do to break through that barrier that they've got. I just talk like I'm talking with you now, and maybe one of them, I've seen the light. Maybe
Yeah,
they'll see
right.
light too. But I don't know. I think they have to have their own experience. So many of them have not experienced anything, but they're out there talking about their research or something, and
Yeah,
yet they've never experienced them. I'm one of the only guys that's really had the experiences around these things and know the strangeness that's associated with them. It's not just their vocal mechanism. It's a lot more. Lights. I saw a UFO one there coming down one time up there. Uh, we've had some things happen up there. It just has no classical explanation. And yet you get a regular scientist who say, well, there has to be one. It has to be a classical explanation, da 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 da. Well, we're not a bunch of dummies. We're businessmen. We're sober camp. Nothing crazy going on other than this stuff.
right.
And so you just have to try to look into it deeper and see what could be causing all these reports. Because I know all these other researchers are getting the same kind of reports, but they're tossing those reports out with the baby water, I think.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. Like you said, the scientists, the academics, they just kind of it's that kind of brotherhood where if you're speaking out on the subject, you're kind of left out. You're the oddball. They don't want anything to do with you anymore. And if being an academic, you want to be or need to be part of that group in order to be recognized and have your work recognized and all that stuff. And so they end up getting, ostracized by them if they start talking about these things. I commend anybody in that field who has the courage to step outside for even just a moment and say, yeah, this is possible. Dr. Jeff Meldrum is one of those guys who, and Dr. Bindernagel, who said, there's something here. These you can't be faking these tracks. There's clearly anatomical mechanics at work here that can't be faked. You can't fake the dermal ridges that you find on them. Or you could maybe, but it would take a whole lot. Those guys took the chance and they stepped out. I hope that at some point somebody else will get the cojones to say, "Hey, listen."
Yeah, I think you're right on it. I know these guys personally. I knew John too, and in fact, I was in Russia and Siberia with Dr. Meldrum and Dr. Benedict too, and we went in Siberia and spoke at the Darwin Museum in Moscow also.
Oh,
and
amazing.
so I know these guys, and I commend them too because they did step out, and they do. Jeff does, but he's getting these same type of reports, and I know him quite well. I mean, we room together, and he's a religious man, very,
Mm-hmm.
and yet, so I know if he believes in God, where's the woo? I mean,
Right.
that's off in another dimension.
Right.
It's certainly not here. At least we don't see it.
Right.
So, you got to wonder where he puts that in his personal life, but he won't get out of talk. He won't talk off the parameters he's been taught in. And he's a good man, though. I respect him a lot, and he's doing a lot. He keeps the Bigfoot thing alive in a professional manner. But until they have their own personal experience, I don't think they're ever going to really realize. Then I don't know if they can step out of it or not. But maybe they'll look into it a little deeper, like I have. And I know one time somebody told me when I was on a program, said we have to, as researchers, we need to step up our our language and talk better so that academia will get a hold of it. I totally disagreed. I said, no, they need to step up. That's how I feel about it anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where meeting things where they're at. There's no experts in this field. It's one of those things. Anyone tells you they're a liar, because there's no one who's been able to study one of these things up close and personal. No autopsies, nothing it's substantial anyway. It's all based on people's first-person accounts, photographic evidence, audio evidence, video evidence, and then pattern behaviors that people continue to see over and over, or these things that happen during these encounters that people continue to see over and over. So it's I think for science, where they continue to say, oh, there's not enough evidence, we don't have a body, where's the body? But somebody said this to me not too long ago. There's been people who've been convicted of murder on far less evidence than what we have of these creatures, and they're right. I mean, there's so much. So I just I get so frustrated when they won't step up, like you said. It's so aggravating. Occam's razor has to slice our way at some point. So is it easier to believe that these thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of reports are the people who are saying these things are crazy, or these things are real? I think it's easier to believe that these things are real than that there's that many crazy people out there making up false Bigfoot claims.
Yeah. I don't even try to convince people that Bigfoot exists. When I speak at these conventions, I just I say what I think and what I know and what I have, the evidence that I have, and if they want to believe it, fine, because you'll never convince some people unless they have an experience like that something's going on. I've had people that were firm skeptics over here until they had something happen, and all of a sudden they're over here talking about it, and so it takes something like that to get them to believe. But most researchers, though, are still looking for the ape in the woods, and that's these things will fool you. They're smart.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're very intuitive. And then they have a human component. I mean, I'm pretty well firm with that now because of the studies I've had and the people the professors and things that's chimed in, and they have to have a human component. I know when the DNA came out on here a while back on two different subjects or two different studies, so there's a human component in there. Well, most researchers just give it thumbs down because it has to be contaminated if it's got a human component, because nothing else is human but us. Well, these things have a human component, and I think some of these physicists, geneticists, are going to get vindicated.
I totally agree. There's too much that that points to that. At least for me, even little things like if you took an animal, right? If you took 3 tigers and you put them in a room together, you're gonna have a very hard time telling them apart. Generally, most people are, but these things, they look very different from one another. They're very distinct. They have similar features, but from what people describe, their facial characteristics look completely different, just like you and I do. And there's not many things on the planet that look that different, except for humans. At least from my point of view, I don't know. I'm not.
Well, I got a theory on that one too.
Yeah, go for it. Let's hear it.
Well, I believe in UFOs and aliens.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, who doesn't? Now the government says we can believe in them since Roswell was not a weather balloon, right?
Yeah.
Well, aliens have been coming in for eons. I mean, way before we ever were created or formed or whatever happened with us. I think the troglodytes did evolve, just like Darwin says, but there's a piece missing, obviously. And I think that aliens have messed with the genome of different species, and especially primates, because they walk upright. They can, and that's where I go with it. I think that Bigfoot and different type of aliens have been here too. I mean, I think not just there's more than one kind of entity out there that's been on this earth. Sure. I've been in Peru and Bolivia, and I've seen these structures that we can't copy them today. No. They're just too advanced. There's advanced technology been here, and that's just yet. If they can manipulate the DNA of a subject, they would do that. And I've seen these elongated skulls, which are not totally human. They just got a single parietal, where we have two, one on each side of our brain, and they had about 25-30% more brain matter than we have. But when the Incas tried to mimic them with a cradle board in their youth, they didn't get more brain; they just got a headache for their baby. So anyway, I've seen this stuff with your own eyes. When you see it with your own eyes, you have to open your head up to something with advanced technology has been here, and something with advanced technology is probably here now. They're able to cloak. They're out of our vision, out of our parameters of sight, and that's just, I think, what's happening. There's a hybridization program going on, and why is probably because they want their species to acclimate to this climate, and maybe they have a way of raising their personal frequency too, because we're supposed to raise our frequency to get out of this environment.
Mm-hmm.
We're energy, frequency, and vibration. Tesla physics, that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's energy at the most minute level. So when we pass on, what do we pass on to? Energy can't die. Your consciousness can't die. You're just going to keep going. And that's Stephen Hawking's, physicist, Einstein. Nothing can die. It only changes form.
Mm-hmm.
So religious people say, well, you're going to go to heaven when you die. Well, what's that? And what is that? And if you're a physicist, you're just going to change forms, because what you are, your essence, is not going to die. It's just going to change forms. So what that changes to, I think, has got to learn its lesson. That soul that passes on has got to learn its lesson. Mm-hmm. And I get talking a little idealistic here, but it's kind of fun.
No, go. I'm all for it.
Well, when we're in a three-dimensional environment. We're all three-dimensional people working with a vibration that's. And every time you think of something negative or work with something negative or get mad at somebody, that makes you feel bad. Really, it hurts you. Mm-hmm. If you can help people and have compassion for people, that's going to raise you up and get you better and change your frequency to a higher level. And the more you can do that, and that's what the masters taught us of old, is love and compassion. When you got love and compassion going for you, you will change your frequency. You'll go. And when you do go, whatever form you change into might be a good one instead of a bad one. I think we have to learn our lesson somewhere. If you've treated somebody badly, done something really bad, you got to make up for it somehow. And you got to learn how to do the same thing again over again until you learn it. But that's away from Bigfoot. That's not Bigfoot subject.
That's okay.
But if they are what we think they are, maybe aliens have the same need to change their vibrational frequency too. Because I think most of them live in the fifth dimension. We were created by something in a very high dimension, from the highest, which is the 10th dimension, I think, way up there. And they are pretty much, still, I get right back where I was. So I said, I'm going to talk about Bigfoot anymore. We're talking about this.
But it's all connected, though. It's all connected.
Well, it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's exciting to think of how we can do what we're made to do, what we're supposed to do. And that's treat other people with kindness and love and compassion. And when you start doing that, you're going to raise your personal vibrational frequency. And so things are going to work out better for you. Mm-hmm. I don't get sick. I mean, I've been sick in a long, long time. And I think that's because I've got this attitude of I don't get sick. And the more you can, never mind. I get off philosophical here.
No, because I believe all of this stuff, right? And I don't think enough people talk openly about some of this, because you can get religion involved and people get sensitive to it. But I think it's doing a disservice if you don't have a mind open enough to discuss all the possibilities. And what you're talking about, where raising your vibrational level to be a better version of yourself is true. When the more love and compassion you have for everything around you, the more things work in harmony the way that they're supposed to, right? We weren't. I don't think that we were put here to fight each other over our skin color, or because you wear blue and I wear gray, or you believe in the woo and I don't, or that's the complete opposite of what we were supposed to be. Whether you believe it in a religious sense or you believe it just in a spiritual sense, we were supposed to be here as one one giant family, and that's not just us. I'm talking about everything from us down to the animals and the plants and everything else working together to make this planet as amazing as it could be. If you think about what this planet is, this is the lottery. I mean, it's the lottery. You won the lottery by being born who you are. Period. And this planet to be what it is in an infinite, in an infinite space, to have this planet where we're all together living and having the things we need is just incredible when you think about it that way. It's just it's crazy. It's crazy.
Glad you're saying all this. That's really, really good. I compliment you for saying all that. That's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is the jewel. This planet's the jewel, and we're about to blow it up.
Yep.
I think that's when aliens might step in, really, because they want this planet. They don't want us to destroy it. It rings out through the universe, I think, because this is very special. We're very special as humans because we have the opportunity to be something better.
Yes.
And we're supposed to evolve into that. And you do that through doing what the master said, just go for it. And we're all spiritual beings. We're not religious beings. We're spiritual beings. Like it or not, we're our consciousness. We're spirits.
Yeah.
And we're just inhabiting this one body right now. Some people believe in multiple embodiments. I personally do. I didn't used to. I wasn't raised that way. But it's the only thing that makes sense to me, because it's how else you get to respond to the things that you need to respond to and become better. Some people die at 22 and they're just killing somebody else, but it's we can do better, and we got to do better. This earth is a vibration too. But Bigfoot, getting back to Bigfoot, that's what people are listening for, huh?
You'd be surprised. The people who listen to this show, they're really, really. I don't have the largest, subscriber count. This is pretty new. It's only been like 2 months. But the people who do listen are such a great group. They're so open-minded. Like I can talk about just about anything pertaining to UFOs, Bigfoot, spirituality, and they're interested. So don't worry at all. If you want to go off, we're good.
I go off. You just watch me.
Go for it.
Just watch. No, I am 80 years old now, and I just say what I think. And I'm not in anything for the money or for notoriety or nothing. I just want what I believe to be true to be felt, and if it is true, and I think it is, or I wouldn't be saying it. And I think it's because of my 50 plus years of doing this and interviewing people and putting the dots together. Who was it? Edgar Mitchell. He said it takes classical and quantum sciences together to have clear perception. And you got these researchers who won't even listen to that. It takes both sciences. You got to know we live in a three-dimensional environment under classical science, Newtonian physics. But there's more going on. It's Newtonian physics is based on everything being measurable, predictable, material, physical. Well, that's not true. Everything in our three-dimensional environment is. You get out of this, and it's unpredictable. I asked somebody one time years ago, how far is it to the end of the universe? Well, it kind of throws you a loop. Nobody can answer that. You have to conceive that there cannot be an end.
Right.
Well, that's how you conceive God, too, whatever God is.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to conceive it, because you're not going to see it in this three-dimensional environment.
Mm-hmm.
So once you understand that you just don't know everything, and you're open-mindedness is a big deal. The parachute only works when it opens, So you have to treat our mind like a parachute and make it open to new things. I don't mean you have to believe everything, but you have to have it open to at least listen. I think that's what got me started too. So many researchers years ago when I started researching was throwing these people out, just let them go, and say, that can't be real, because the trackways disappeared when they saw it, or it cloaked out or something. I thought, well, how many people kept saying that off and on, different people, and then I knew some people, really credible people, that said that, and okay, how can that happen? What happens through the laws of quantum physics when you change your energy or your matter into energy? Mm-hmm. And that can happen if you got the right frequency. So somehow these things, I think, some of them, they're not all the same. I'm going to say that up front. They're not all the same. And that's because on what created them, what alien messed with what genome of what animal. Does a dogman exist? I don't have a reason to believe it don't exist. A lot of reports of them, but I've never seen one. But I saw one. But anything exists.
Right.
We just don't have to. We just don't see it with our eyes. We're limited with our eyes, and it's just it's amazing what if you really get into history and go all the way back into the Anunnaki people too. I don't know if you've ever read into that, how, because you got the first language of Sumerians and you get the stories that were written in stone back then. And then you got Abraham, the father of the Hebrew nation, who moved up from southern Macedonia up there, and he was in the culture of the Sumerians, and he would have picked up the stories of what the Sumerians were having, the stories. And that's what I think beget the Hebrew language and the Hebrew Bible. And that's when they changed God into singular instead of plural too. That's what throws you too. I don't even like to talk about that because people really throw me in the funny farm then. But they put God as a singular entity, where every time it's mentioned in the Sumerian text, it's plural.
Yeah.
And people think about that one. That high energy frequency beings, light beings, and God is light. The Bible, what it says about God is light.
Right.
And we are light beings. Well, we're made in the image of that. And we're made in the image of something very, very special. That's what gives us our very, very special attributes that we can develop if we just work at it. And you do that through not throwing away all these other things, but take the nuggets out of different places like chakras, energy workers, all that stuff balances together. You can't just throw it all out because ancients have been using this stuff for aeons and
forever.
And then you get, well, anyway, I'll get off on this a little bit. But
it's okay. Because I get excited about it too, and I talk about this a little bit. Like, so it's all theory, but like I tend to think that there's something to the fact that these. Obviously, I agree with you. I think that there have been some that have been messed with genetically by extraterrestrials, aliens, whatever. Because if you look across the globe and you go back hundreds of years, thousands of years, and you look at these drawings and etchings on different places across this globe, where there was no mailman back then, there was no internet, there was no TV, they could not communicate. But yet they have the same pictures of these light beings or spaceship type things or hairy giants, even all over the place. This is not a coincidence. I mean, did they all just make this up one day, like thousands of years ago? It's not a coincidence.
This Earth's been around here a long time. There's been bipedal entities on it a long time. The troglodytes did evolve up, and I think they've just been messed with. And I think some of these beings they call Bigfoot, Sasquatch, have been diluted down from crossbreeding with indigenous people.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes their trackways different. That makes ours is different than the Patterson track. Roger Patterson, I got one of his tracks, and it's very human-like. You've seen it. But ours was splayed, more like this, and just 5 toes. And over the years, that's the only track way that we found was that type configuration. So I've talked to different people about this, and just the different people that see them differently, like you was mentioning earlier, they are different. I've been into Nepal, I've been into Siberia, and these things are just reported a little bit different, and I think they've just been messed with. And but I do think there's different types, and some of them may have been just a relic hominid that's evolved up, but I think a lot of them have crossbred with indigenous people, and I think that's what the Roger Patterson track was, because it looks too human-like. Looks very human-like.
Agreed. You see, oh, my cat's going to make an appearance.
I saw, yeah. Keep your neck warm.
Yeah, keep my neck warm. She's going to scratch me up. This is Hope. Say hi, Hope. Say hi. I actually, the other day, because I go out here in Connecticut, which I know is not considered a very squatchy place, but I go up to the northeastern corner to the state forest, and I've had some stuff happen. But I found a new area just recently that each time I've gone, there's been there's been activity, clear activity, structures, stick structures that there's no way these things were made by men. I mean, there's a 30 to 40 foot long tree with a root ball attached, suspended in the air in the crook of another tree, 45 feet up. How does that happen? I mean, no man did that in the middle of the state forest. I mean, that the tree that's sitting there is literally, the big tree is split like this. This thing's sitting in it perfectly. And this is 35 or 40 feet in the air. The tree itself is 35 or 40 feet long. I couldn't lift it. There's no way I could lift it. So how does that happen? Didn't fall there. The root ball's attached. There's no, and then there was a track. One single track, just one.
Yeah.
Just one.
That throws you too on the one track. You look for the other track. Where'd it go?
I looked everywhere.
It's energy.
Yeah.
That's what orbs are too.
Yeah. Let's talk about those.
Yeah, I've seen them, and a lot of people have. I filmed one up. I've seen one up at. Saw one. I keep getting them up at Joe Hauser's Montana Vortex in Montana, and you can. The camera's eyes will see more than your eyes will.
Yes.
And you take a shot out there and then look at the picture and there'll be an orb in there. I blew that up and you could see a design in the orb. There's like a face in one and just a design like a Mayan calendar in another one. And, these things, what are they doing? What is it?
Right.
They don't talk to you.
Right. But there's something. I mean, I've seen videos of them recently that some researchers have caught, and they have. Or they seem to have some kind of density. I mean, they have structure to them. When I'm looking at them, there's a shadow on the front side. You don't get a shadow on something that doesn't have structure to it, But then on the inside, it looks like what you talked about. It looks like there's some kind of pattern or something shifting shape or moving inside there. And that's amazing stuff. And there was like 7 of these things all around this camp. Some
Have you seen
basketballs.
Have you seen that documentary that David Paulides put out, Missing 401, The Hunted?
Absolutely.
You've seen the long elongated light. That was a perfect reproduction of what we saw up there.
Really?
Yeah, it looked just like it. We didn't know what to think about it because I'm up there with just a little pea shooter, and I say pea shooter, so 38 with birdshot in it for the bears. That's just for the bears, get the bears away if they get your food or something. Anyway, it's really good. But what was that all about? I guess kind of slowed by us and watched it for quite a while until it just went out of sight. And what was it doing? You don't know, but it's obviously, well, it got my attention. Our attention, I should say. So, yeah, it's a form of energy. It was definitely controlled. It wasn't just something shooting through there. It wasn't shooting at all. It was floating through there. And just interesting stuff.
Yeah, I've seen him even maneuver, go around trees, right? So, like you said, this is not just some floating this had direction, right? Whatever it was doing, it had direction. It was being controlled somehow, some way.
Al Berry wrote about the Johnson brothers were up there one time. All 3 of them actually. Well, one of them's the son. And they had these orbs following them around above their heads, actually following them just above their heads. Crazy. Well, what do you do with that? They know what to do with it. So many strange stuff goes on, and it's all about them messing with us, I think. Because we had one time we thought our camp was being tore apart up there. We was inside the shelter, and we haul these barrels in and food. We stock it up there, so when we did walk in at some time without the animals, we could have our sleeping bags and food to eat and stuff like that, pack in light. And we thought all that stuff had been taken out and thrown around. Well, you got there later when all the commotion stopped and nothing's changed. Well, what do you do with that one?
Yeah.
I mean, could they have hypnotized us all at once, or could they have made that sound with their vocal mechanism? It's very expansive, very, very way up there. They can mimic, I think, just about anything.
Oh, so, absolutely. Absolutely.
Joe Rogan, that's who I was trying to think about.
Oh, Rogan, yeah, okay, yeah.
He's the one that said that he could go out and make those sounds, and he thought it was phony. Well, I feel sorry for him. He hadn't done his homework. He's a smart guy.
He's a
Very
smart
smart
guy.
guy. Yeah, but at the time he wanted me on his show, I didn't like his bullshit meter that he talked about. I thought it was just kind of down. It was a quality thing to do, but he didn't do that so much anymore. He's stepped up a notch or two. But I wish he'd have done his homework before he made a statement like that. He doesn't know the background of what we've had done, the sciences behind it. He's obviously never experienced anything, but still, uh, he won't step
And
up.
he's an avid hunter, you know. He hunts a lot, so he's been all over the country, and I think the world probably hunting. Because I'm a fan. I watch this podcast. I've watched it forever. Um, and he's a very intelligent guy. He has a lot of very intelligent people on that show. You know, very
Yeah.
educated academics, doctors, engineers, all kinds of them. Some of the most successful people on the planet have been on his show, and that was one thing that upset me is when it came to that subject. He was so very closed-minded, and I was like, man, you know, let me down because I really enjoyed what he was doing. You know, not just focusing on the stuff that I think most other podcasts do, but really opening up to a ton of different topics that people don't talk about. And for him to say, you know, no, these things aren't real. Come on, are you serious? Bigfoot, nah. And I was like, man, really? I can't believe. But I think for a lot of people, like especially somebody who's been around the world hunting, and they've never seen one, they just think small. They think, oh, I've never seen one, and I've been in the
Yeah.
Sierra Nevadas, I've been in Siberia, I've been in South America. Like,
The
how?
hardest person to convince of anything is the people who think they know everything.
Yeah,
And if they've been, especially hunters who've been out in the forest every season, they're out there trying to. They've never seen one, so they think, well, they can't exist if I've never seen one or saw one. So they're just you're not going to see everything that's going on.
no,
Where do they go? How come you haven't found a body? That's the biggest question. Well,
yeah, I get so sick of hearing
That's
that.
That's an easy one to. And I don't think Joe would ever ask that question, but nature takes care of itself, and he knows that. Everybody knows that. If you leave anything out in the woods long enough, you won't see it after a year or two. You see any evidence of it even, and that's just the way it is in nature. However, maybe they do something different when they're out of. Do they go underground? Native lore says they live in two worlds.
Mm-hmm.
If they are interdimensional, where do they go? Fifth dimension, I think, and that's where some people see them cloaking through the fourth dimension of time. And that's just a theory I got, but I don't know.
Well,
Nothing.
there's a video. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I think it's a pretty famous video. There's a lady who's a pretty, I forget her name right now. It's slipping me, but she's a pretty famous researcher, I guess. Out in the Pacific Northwest. She's been doing it for quite a while, and she caught a video of what clearly looks like a cloaked Bigfoot. I mean, it's the best video evidence I've ever seen, and I was not a believer in this for a long time. I did not believe in the woo. I did not believe in the until you start seeing things for yourself that you just can't explain. And then I think that most people end up at some point after they've done this for long enough. I think most people end up shifting over to the other side because it's just impossible not to. How do you? There's got to be some kind of correlation between all of it for it to be happening. In the where these things are active and where you're seeing signs of them or hearing them or but this video is clear. I mean, it looks like the Predator. That's what it looks like. Looks just like the Predator.
Yeah, I know her, and I've seen another one similar to that. This lady I know very well. She's a school teacher. She was walking her cat going through the woods. She was filming her cat, and she noticed her cat was looking at something. She didn't see what it was looking at, and she just started filming. And when you look at the film later, you see this picturization form going right by her like that.
So crazy.
And again, I've known other people, very credible people, that have seen this effect. So somehow they know how to, I think, change their matter into energy, and I think it's through sound vibration. That's just my opinion, but don't call me woo-woo because I'm a citizen scientist. Because I don't think paranormal and quantum science is synonymous at all. It's quantum science can answer a lot of the questions in the paranormal. like I'm doing in my book, with Quantum Bigfoot. Uh,
If
it
you haven't
answers.
read that book, people, you need to read that book. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Yeah, it brings science and spirituality together, because what is synonymous with quantum science is spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in my opinion. In fact, I think Tesla said that. What one man calls God, another man calls quantum science.
Mm-hmm.
And then Einstein said, "What if?" Forget that saying he got. Something about science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Something like that. Yeah. But I think if he'd say it today, he wouldn't say religion. He'd say spirituality, because I think religion is different than spirituality.
sure. Yeah.
I think.
I was this is like, so this is where I kind of was talking to people the other day about when I was doing some research out in the state forest not too long ago. I had some of the normal stuff go on, right? Like stuff is being thrown, and I know people say, "Oh, it's falling from the trees." No, it's not falling from the trees. There's trajectory to this. This is not acorns dropping down. There's things whizzing by. They're hitting, they're hitting the trees. They're coming through the leaves. You can hear the, and then landing, a foot or two from you. Then there was vocalizations. I heard something that sounded a lot like the Ohio howl. Off in the distance, and then from another side of me, I was hearing grunts and whoops, and then at the same exact time, this is where like things get weird, right? At the same exact time, I heard what sounded like a woman singing. It had a melody to it, and a weird flash of light through the trees. It was the strangest thing, but. This is like when it's so hard, because when you tell people, a lot of them are think you crazy, right? But like you said, until they've had their own experience. But man, it's so frustrating, because it's like, I was there. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. Please just believe me. Just like, please just believe me. And I promise you'll learn something.
There's a lot of people have these reports like that, where they hear their dog's name being called when they don't have their dog
Yes.
with them, stuff like that, and they'll hear chatter, some kind of language going on, and no one else around. This exodus I just on here last week, we saw about before we came on the program, I think, where these guys put that on, but the filmer that I had up there went back, he and I did, and he's got a IR reads heat. I'm sorry, my brain's
Thermal.
Thermal. He had a thermal, and he was seeing everything. In fact, he could take his thermal, and I could hold his cell phone right here, and I could see what he was seeing at a distance through his cell phone. His thermal imaging was talking to his cell phone. Anyway, anything that has heat is going to pick it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he'd picked up a few things here and there, but no human form. Didn't see a bear, nothing like what he did another time, but not this time. We're back at this little place where we were, and all of a sudden, this rock comes out and hits right there. It's got a heat signature on it. There's nobody else back there. What does that? Had to be something. It had to be a hand.
Right.
So.
But you're not seeing the thing attached to the hand.
No, but still, it took a hand to heat it up.
Right. Of course.
The thermal would pick it up like that. That was pretty good, I thought. So anyway, that's.
Do you know who Mike Patterson is?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't ask anyone their personal opinions about things, but this to me is a guy who's put up with so much. He's been ostracized. He's been attacked. He's been, run through the ringer over and over. He's had his accounts hacked, and he still continues to stand his ground and say, no, this stuff is happening. It's really happening. And when people try to argue, I try to say, like, you have to look at things from a different perspective. Is it more beneficial for Mike to continue lying about something that's not true, and to put himself through these things that are just, where he's getting his name smeared, or he's getting his social media accounts hacked, he's got people on his property spying on him and trespassing and all stuff? Or is this guy telling the truth? I have to lean towards he's telling the truth. And in listening to those vocals, to me, there's nothing about them that sounds human. Nothing.
The
Nothing.
problem with it, when Scott Nelson got a hold of it years ago, it's in the human range.
Oh, it
And
is.
he was, yeah. But these things, Scott tries to find something that's something like ours, and it's outside the human range. And so he couldn't verify it. And I think that kind of got him off to a bad start, I don't have something to say one way or the other with Mike because I haven't been where he's at, and I can only empathize with him a little bit, but I don't know him that well. I don't chime on people like you. I don't chime in one way or the other. Just
Yeah.
because it's not right. It's judgmental, and to me, that's a negative thing to judge somebody else. Everybody has their karma. Like I'm going to use the word karma to respond to issues. That's all we're here for, Kyle, is to respond to experiences that we have. And our whole goal is supposed to be to respond to them properly with high vibration, with positive energy and love and compassion, like I mentioned earlier. And if we run across our experiences and become a victim instead of a winner, because there's no such thing as losing. You're the winner. You learn something.
Mm-hmm.
So we're here to learn and to learn from how to respond, how to be better. And if you don't learn, well, you got to learn. Sooner or later, you got to learn. And I don't chime in on people, good or bad, one way or the other, just because I don't believe in it. I'm not there. I'm not going to judge them because they have their own issues to respond to.
Yeah, it doesn't do the community any good anyway. I mean, it's everyone.
Right. Yeah.
Everyone's here for their own reasons, and whether it's to learn or to entertain themselves, or a form of escapism. Even life is tough sometimes, and sometimes people just use this as a way to get away from the normal the stressors of life. And I don't. I empathize with the guy because I felt like he just been put through so much, and I felt like he just seemed like a genuine guy to me, just a regular dude. But I thought that some of that stuff was just so intriguing. That's the thing for me, is right. That's the fan in me of the subject, is that I get excited, and I'm like, man, I want to know. And he told me, he's like, you can come up anytime. I don't know if the invitation is if it sticks, if it's for real. If I was like, hey, I got a ticket and I'm coming up, if he closed me out. But if he's inviting people up, I don't know. Whatever. We'll leave that alone. There's another lady whose name is Snow White Bigfoot on YouTube. Her name's Angie, and she has some relationship with these creatures. They've been coming to her house for years, and she has an ongoing video diary of everything that's happened. There is again, this is where I have to go towards the woo stuff, right? She lives in this really cute little house on this beautiful plot of land, and I forget what state she lives in. But it's gorgeous. I mean, it's just beautiful out there. And there's a garden and little fields, and she has these things come on her deck and into her garage during broad daylight, apparently, because they're coming in and they're moving stuff around. They're playing games with her through objects that she leaves out. And this happens during the day. I don't care if it's a juvenile. I just don't think there's any way that these things could potentially do that without having some sort of ability to remain hidden. I mean, I think you're going to end up seeing it at some point if it doesn't have this ability. If it's coming in your garage and right on your deck during the middle of the day with plenty of windows around the house, it's amazing stuff.
Yeah, I wondered why I didn't see them more often up there, because they were around a lot.
Yeah.
And there was times when I had the best little cassette recorder you could get in those days. And it was stereo. I had a microphone over here. I was sticking out through the shelter wall over here. One over here sticking out through the shelter wall. Sock over and everything, You hear this thing walking around out there. After we go in and sit down, they stop their chattering. They get closer and start walking around. Well, I listened to this thing going around. There's a break. I'm waiting for the break in the light, the shelter wall, because it's not solid. And I never saw the break. I don't know. I don't know why, but I didn't ever see a break, and this happened several times. Another time when Warren and I, Johnson, we thought there's one out there yelling, just him and I there at camp, and we'll go out, run out through the shelter right quick and see it run away because it was bright moonlit night. And we got so far and just got stopped like a force field, and we thought sure it was going to run away, but never seen anything run away. And we couldn't get any closer to that tree though, where we thought it had to be. And he said, "I don't know about you, but I can't go any further." And I said, "I don't know what's stopping me. I can't go any further either." So we both went back in the shelter. As soon as I got back in the shelter, it started mouthing off again. I think it's toy with you. And I mentioned this to a scientist here later on, and he said, "Well, it's either infrasound or pheromones." And at the time, well, they're not like us, so it must be infrasound. But now that it has a human component to it, I wonder if it couldn't have been pheromones. But still, I go with infrasound because that affects people. You don't hear it, but it affects you. And had it happen to another time in the woods up there. But strange things happen with these things, and
All the time.
they're just all the time. And people want to call it the woo, but there is a science behind how that happens, and there's also, the physics like infrasound.
Do you have a theory on if because these things are obviously intelligent, sentient beings? They're smart, they're cunning, they're completely suited to live in the environment they live in. Plus these extra abilities that they have, where they could remain hidden forever. Do you have a theory then why at some points do they show themselves to people?
Well, I think they want to be here. They want to be in our three-dimensional environment. In fact, when they're raising a young one, I think that young one has to be raised in a three-dimensional environment until it learns how to do what they do. That's my theory. Is they're seen because they want to eat the food we have. They want to be on this earth. They're made to be in any kind of weather. You get up Nepal, they're up at 17,000 feet up there. And they get over and they can handle just about anything. They got more hair than we do.
Sure.
And I think they just want to be here. They get out there. Once you're out of this dimension, this three-dimensional environment we live in, time as we perceive it don't exist anymore. So
yeah, totally different.
They get out, and time will go slower. They can, an alien or something could travel for 1 year out in space and come back, and maybe 1,000 years have passed. It's just on Earth. Just things are different, and that's established pretty much by science now. So people talk about, well, look how long it would take to go so many light years. Well, they're thinking of light years like we'd have to travel, as fast as we can go is da-da-da. Well, even if you're traveling at the speed of light, you couldn't get there across this galaxy or this universe. And
no,
they just, you got to have a different way. And I think they travel a lot of them through consciousness. I do believe that.
yeah.
But a lot of them don't even leave the solar system either. They're right in their own solar system.
So you said earlier too that not all of these things are the same and have these abilities. You think there's some out there that are strictly flesh and blood that can't live in different dimensions and do these things, that haven't been manipulated by?
Yeah, but they're alien to us, but they're just like another planet with troglodytes on it or something. I think there's all kinds of innumerable amount of planets out there with life on it.
Sure.
And they're all kind of different stages. A lot of them are one-dimensional, two-dimensional, and there's others three-dimensional like us. And then you got some, once you get out of that, then you're a higher dimension, and you can do things that are different than what we do now.
I kind of thought for a while that maybe that the Bigfoot, their ability to do these things is related to the fact that they never really lost that connection to everything around them like we did, where we started to rely so much on other things to help us along the way. Technology being one of them, probably the major one that's made us so distant from where we really came from and who we really were, and our connection to the planet around us, and the abilities that I believe we were all born with. There's people out there who are mediums. There's people out there who can use telekinesis. So it's proven that we have these abilities. It's just all about the connection to them and where they come from, and maybe these creatures, because they've lived in such a harmony and in tune with everything around them, they've just continued to grow those abilities.
Yeah, and they've
I
been here
mean,
longer, I think, longer than we have.
sure, yeah.
So they've tuned them in. They've created a little bit different too. They have the vocal mechanism for language. At least some of them do. I don't think they're all the same. Again, some of them may talk. Some may not have a need for talking. They can communicate telepathically or something.
Mm-hmm.
We can do all that.
Yeah.
We haven't been shortchanged at all. We just haven't evolved enough into what we're supposed to be, like we're supposed to be. And when we were created pretty much perfect. We lost all that, and we've been shown how to come back to it, but we haven't got there yet. It's just love and compassion. It's got to boil right down to that. And I don't want to sound like a holier than thou or nothing like that, but
No,
I was raised in religion, taught religiously, so I know scriptures, and I know how there's some nuggets in there that you got to pay attention to.
yeah.
And there's nuggets in a lot of tradition that you got to pay attention to. And you can't say all the Native American lore is wrong, because they got stories that, why don't science listen to them? They've been here longer than we have, Native Americans. And yet they say they live in two worlds. They say they live in trees. I've heard them say that. Trees are a big deal for these things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they don't like us cutting trees. I've had so many reports around these things being seen when people are cutting trees and stuff like that's going on. And I think, well, that's another story. I'm writing a chapter about that in my next book.
Oh, there's another book.
Yeah, it's coming out. Well, it'll be a while, but I have to do a lot of homework on these things.
Oh man, I'm excited. I actually, speaking of the trees thing, this is a pretty crazy story. I have a friend who has ongoing activity at his property in Florida, and so he was out there and he was clearing an area where he was going to build on. I guess I think that's what he was doing, and he happened to look, and just off in the distance, it wasn't too far away, he could see a large one that was crouched down, and then a smaller one that was probably about 6 or 7 feet away from it, sitting on the ground. And he was in I forget if it was like a backhoe or a bulldozer or some kind of machine, and he was, pulling stumps and trees out of the ground. Well, this thing vocalized to him, and he turned and looked at it. And as he's staring at it, it stood up, and it started doing this to him. And so he thought, oh, this thing's waving at me, right? He's like, it's waving at me. It just was waving like a Bigfoot must wave, or it's trying to mimic us, and it didn't quite get it right. So he's talking to his friend later at his friend's house, and he's like, you won't even believe what this thing did. It was waving at me like this. And his wife, the friend's wife, says, oh, I know what that means. That's sign language for trees. This is the stuff, though, that like when I hear it, I just get so I get excited. I'm like, what else do these things know? What else do they know?
Yeah, I know trees are important to them.
Absolutely.
I was up in Portlock, Alaska here last year, with a Discovery Channel, and they wanted some Bigfoot guy to talk to them about how they could re-habituate to the Portlock. You ever heard of Portlock story?
Yeah.
Where these people supposed to got mangled there, 30 of them, or so 3 dozen or so, got mangled and just tore apart. It wasn't a bear. They said they were seeing a Bigfoot-like creature. So they abandoned the village. That was 1949. And they wanted to re-habituate it so they could start their fishing up again and do all that. Well, I was privileged to be taken up there, and they wouldn't know what to do. Well, there's a lot of pressure on me. Yeah, it's safe to come back. Come on back and get your head tore off or something. I didn't know what. But I told them what I thought, because when I flew over the helicopter, when they shuttled me in there, I looked over it pretty well, circled it. And years ago, you could tell where it had been timbered a lot. And some pictures I seen was fish galore. They were overfishing it, I think, and over timbering it. And they were also mining the area. And I told them, I said, I would suggest just respecting the land, respecting the property. I'm pretty sure if you were encroaching on their area too much and they didn't like it and they come out and screamed at you 12, 15 foot tall, and that's how big they said they were,
Whew.
you'd have probably shot at it. And they were, I bet you anything, they were shooting at it. I know there's a guy up there with a gun when we were there, and if one would have came out of the trees at that time and screaming, he
12
probably
to
got
15
stung.
feet
But
tall.
yeah, well, there's a lot of reports of the 12-foot tall ones. In fact, we got to track it up at our camp, up on the ridge. Never had it right in camp. We found it up on the ridge, 4 big tracks, 25.5 inches. They were 13 feet apart. I didn't tell people about that one, but that had to be at least 12 foot tall. And he just, these things can get pretty big. So the biggest question people have when they hear that is, how does something like that stay so concealed? Well, they either go underground or they cloak out. I don't know, but they're not out every day looking around at people. They are curious, and they love to be out here, and they love to be on this planet like we are. So anyway.
25 inches long and 13 feet apart.
Uh,
That's
it just came off
that's a
of,
giant. I mean,
yeah,
that
it's
is
a
a
giant.
giant.
Yeah, that's big. I got pictures of that. If I hadn't run across it myself, I'm not sure I'd have believed it, because we were dealing with something with 19, 22 inches right in there. Had a little 9-inch track one time in the snow, along with an 18-inch track we were following. That's a suggestive mother and child. And we've recorded that child's voice. Uh, and it's so we know we've heard it other times, but I got this one recorded. It's in my one book, Voices in the Wilderness. The book, let me say this right quick, comes with a link for downloading the sound. So when you get to the context of the sound, you can hear the sound I'm talking about. So it's in that book. And,
Another great book.
Well, it's my chronicle. It's just what I went through and what happened and when it happened and what I went through. Also gets into my South America trip a little bit, one of them. And but it's totally different than the Quantum Bigfoot. The Quantum Bigfoot kind of gets into some explanations on how this stuff happens, because it happens to too many people to ignore it. And I was one of them. You can't just ignore it. When a lot of people do, you just put it up on the shelf because you can't explain it.
Yeah.
And they don't tell anybody about it because it's too weird.
Right.
But
weird enough to just tell people that you're seeing a giant hairy bipedal hominid, not to mention, oh, by the way, you think this thing can disappear.
But, years ago, I was in a board meeting with some guys up in Canada. I was involved in coming up there, and this one guy said, I can take you, once he found out who it was, and I was interested in the subject, I can take you to a spot above Fairbanks where I seen one disappear. And I just kind of wrote him off the time, because it was kind of, yeah. But I didn't ignore him, but, I put it in my memory bank and kept it there. And then over the years now, I've heard other people say, credible people say they've saw them disappear. And you have to kind of figure out how that could happen if it does. And energy and matter are interchangeable. Bam, bottom line. So all you got to do is figure out the frequency that your energy is. I mean, that your matter is, your body, and you can get that frequency going. You can change it into energy.
Yep. They say that if Einstein said that if we could use all of our brain, that we would be one giant ball of energy, period. If we could use all of our brain.
Oh, you'd probably want to be that way. In fact, that's probably how we were created, from the light beings. Light beings is what created us. And you go through all the ancient books about the shiny ones. Even Satan was called the shiny one. The light beings are very high frequency beings that just are out there. We'd be surprised how many things are around us right now we're just not seeing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This, a little paranormal, but if people believe in ghosts, right, and they're obviously operating in a different dimension or frequency than we are. I don't know why people have such a hard time believing in, something like this happening. But
I think it's the fourth dimension of time. I don't think they've got their vibrational frequency up high enough to get out. Or they've chosen not to get out. Because everything has a choice, and that's what we're here for, is make the right choice. But choices are what everybody has, and even when you get into the cosmos, you're going to have choices, and we all will be out there someday. we
So
hope.
it's so incredible to think about it like that.
It is, yeah, it is incredible to think about it. I really, I'm not afraid to die. And I mean, I'm not afraid of what's going to happen because I
Right.
think I know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I just do what I want to do and say what I want to say, and so be it.
Yeah.
Uh, I either live or die, and if I'm here, like I should have been dead a million times. As many times I've been on the edge, I've lived an incredible life, had a really fantastic journey. So I have no regrets at all. But probably have more to go, or I wouldn't still be here. I got
That's
more to
right.
respond to. More to respond to.
What if you? And this is probably a tough question, but we'll keep it to this subject though. As far as the whole Bigfoot thing goes, in your travels and everything that you've done, do you have one incident or one thing that is for you like the most exciting or the most thrilling thing that's ever happened in this field, just the Bigfoot field?
Yes, I think it was 1974 when I saw one, and I interacted with him that night. I recorded it, and yeah, that was pretty exciting and real exciting.
I'd say so. I'd say so.
Well, you finally got to see, at least I did, what was making the sound. Because people
Yeah.
say, well, if you didn't see what made the sound, you don't know what made the sound. Well, that's kind of true.
Yeah.
But still, that night I got to see what made the sound. And it was a big something. Call
Yeah.
them Bigfoot because they have Bigfoot, but what they really are, it could have been just a pure alien. I don't know.
Yeah. I know, and
But they were leaving big tracks. Yeah.
that's the exciting part about it. You don't know. It's so much fun. It's just so much fun, man. I enjoy it. I don't know why people get so upset. There's so much divisiveness in this community. It's crazy. People fighting all the time and arguing. Oh, I'm right. I'm right. Like, man, just have
I
fun.
hope to bring some of that together, Kyle. I just, because I used to be that way. I was a flesh and blood. There have to be some kind of unidentified animal out there for a while, and then and just put those anomalies on the shelf somewhere because you could think about it. It just didn't make any sense. So I understand them. I understand the professors that are involved. I understand people who think differently are okay, because
Hmm.
they got their own path to take. They got their own decisions to make about this subject matter. I just hope that my life represents something that helps people, and if it's on, it's on. If it's not, well, it isn't.
I think you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you.
I think
And
you're
you
doing
are
a great
too. You're
job.
a good thinker. I like your thinking.
Well, thank you. I mean, that means a lot, a real lot. This is this is so special to me. Like I said in the beginning, as a child who was interested in all the weird stuff, Loch Ness, aliens, from the time I was just little, we go to the library. That was the section I go to every single time. And anytime there was a show on, whether it was In Search of Unsolved Mysteries, if there was any chance that I could watch anything that had to do with anything ghostly, paranormal, aliens, extraterrestrial, Loch Ness, or Bigfoot, I was there, man. I wanted to know. I just had that thing inside me where I wanted to know more,
Mhm.
and it never died. It's continued for my whole life, and I'm so glad because it's still fun to me. I just still have so much fun. So to be able to talk to you, this was really an honor. This is amazing.
Well, thank you. They say when you when you're green, you grow, and when you're ripe, you rot. So stay green
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna
because
try.
we're here to grow. Yeah, we're here to grow.
That's right. That's right. Well, listen, I'm not going to keep you any longer. Thank you so much. This means the world to me. I know everybody who watches the show is going to be super excited. And at some point, after you get your next book out, if you're not too busy, I'd love to have you back on.
Well, I'll be one to sell them. So
You can
yeah,
sell them here. We'll put the
right
link
now,
right up.
all my books and my CDs both are downloadable. So
Where,
on my site, ronmoorhead.com.
I'm going to
Yeah.
post the link in the description of this video
Okay.
for
Yeah.
everybody so that
Okay.
they can, if they don't have those books yet, please go get them. They're
They
both
can get the hard
amazing.
copy books too. They're available through my site. Amazon ships them out.
Yeah, and they're both great. They really are. I'm not I'm not a huge book reader, admittedly. I know that's terrible. I shouldn't say that out loud, but if I can listen to it instead of reading it, it sinks in better for me. But I read both of the books and they were wonderful. So
Well, people have been bugging me to try to do an audiobook, so
you should. You got a great voice.
Well, I just got to sit down and do it. Takes
time.
Wife says, well, just sit down and talk and just read your book. Well, it's a little more than that for me because I wanted to make it better. I wanted to inject some things too, which I could put more sounds in it. I could put more, because a lot of people want to listen to those and download something like that because CDs, I think, are generally probably going to go out. People are not going to have those forever. They just keep everything on a little thumb drive.
Right.
Probably stick it in your ear and listen to it.
Right. Yeah. Be able to press a button on your neck or something.
Yeah. Get an implant.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Oh man, well, this was so much fun, Ron. I really appreciate this. And like I said, we'll have you back on in the future.
Thank you, Kyle.
All the best to you and all your endeavors that you got going on from here on out. And hopefully we'll stay in touch.
Well, thank you very much. You take care.
Thank you so much. You guys have a great night, and I'll see you on the next one.